r/AskReddit. Sirius 911 operators, what's the one call that will be with you forever? Mobile, so forgive the formatting. Also not a dispatcher, but my mother was. And I used to go sit with her in the center while she worked. The worst call I ever witnessed her take was a fatality on the interstate. She received a call, said there was a major collision. She entered the call and police and fire were dispatched. She then took another call about the same accident. However, this call was from someone attempting to help the people involved in the crash. The person trying to help was the mother and father of the daughter in the car. The mom and dad were following the daughter and boyfriend home when the accident occurred. Dad was trying to help the daughter and boyfriend, and mother called 911. I can clearly remember my mom had this flip chart where she would ask questions, and based on the answers she could flip to get medical help, or basically instructions on what to tell the caller to help them in the situation. My mom asked if she was breathing, if she was bleeding, so on and so forth, basically triaging the patients. I will never forget when my mom told the caller not to move the girl and the mother said, "Her head is gone. My baby, oh God, my baby." It was the most shrill gasp/sob/scream I have ever heard. The pain and inhuman anguish that poured from that woman. I have never felt my blood run cold like that before. The mother kept asking my mom, "What do we do? How do we help her?" Literally, my mother looked down at her flip cards, looked at the call taker next to her and gulped for air. I did not hear any more from the call or what my mom said because I pushed my chair to the wall to get away from having to hear more. They called in another person to take over for my mom and we never talked about that call again. My mother was a mess for a few days after that. I also stopped going to the center after that. I thought for a long time I wanted to be a dispatcher and showed a lot of interest, so that's why I got to sit in and watch. But not after that call. Used to work at 000. I'll never forget a man calling up because his housemate was dead in the lounge room from an overdose and had been all day. He called around 9 p.m. or something. It was worse because their other housemate was an intellectually disabled guy who had been home all day and just didn't realize what was happening. I told him to get her on the floor and started some CPR instructions. He did it for about 10 seconds before he said, "My name. There is no point. She is gone." I asked what medicines were nearby and he started naming them and just said, "There are too many, I'll collect them up for the ambos." Anyway, we had gone through the formal process and I was getting ready to hang up. He asked me to stay and talk to him, so I did for about an hour while help was coming. He lived in the middle of nowhere. He said he was just sitting out on the back step and it just killed me listening to a grown-ass dude being so wrecked. So when it was time to go I said goodbye and hit the end button before I burst into tears and ran away for 15 minutes. I hope he's doing okay. Took a call from a non-native English-speaking Chinese woman. Her and her husband had just returned home from visiting family in China the night before. The husband, who was a doctor, said he had to get some work done before the next morning and was going to stay up late. The next morning the wife woke up and discovered that her husband never got in bed. She found him in the garage laying over the hood of their car. As I am talking to her and asking her to get him on the ground and perform CPR, she said she couldn't. She was so distraught and didn't speak English well enough to articulate to me that her husband was actually in between their two cars and she had to back one of the cars up out of the garage to get him on the ground to perform CPR. Eventually she gave up trying to answer why she couldn't start CPR and started to scream, "You're killing my husband," at the top of her lungs. I had to listen to her shout that at me over and over and over for the better part of 5 minutes before medics arrived. A 911 call time, that is an eternity. The coroner stopped in later that day and confirmed that the husband had a heart attack and been dead for hours. Full trigger had set in, and when they pulled him off of the hood of the car he began to spin like a top cause of the position of being hunched over the car. I know now that there was nothing I nor the wife could do to save her husband, but for the longest time I've hated her for making me feel like I failed them. I've had sadder calls by far, but that's the one that took the life out of me for continuing to do this job. I copied/pasted this from last time to save my fingers. Sony work, laugh out loud. Hope you enjoy it. It's one that will stick with me for a while, the worst one. I'll hold on to that one for a while longer, one that sticks out in my mind. It was my first week of being released on my own as a call taker. A 14-ish-year-old girl calls to tell me her friend and her are being followed by a guy near the railroad tracks and he kept pulling out his penis and touching her friend on the vagina area. She was walking slightly ahead of him and her friend with her hood up and her phone tucked in against her ear. She would stop talking to me to talk to the guy and turn back around and try to tell me where they were. All she could tell me is that they were near the railroad tracks. I rebid for her location. Felt like it took forever to catch a phase 2. Okay, now I know her general area. Wrote the run to the nearest house my point of fell on, so we had a start point, putting in rear off to give the officers a good reference. I had already sent the run up, and was giving updates as I talked to her. She was trying her darndest to make sure the male didn't know she was on the phone. To top it all off with, it was dark outside. She couldn't figure out which way they were working, east or west, so I told her to pick a direction, and when she came up on a good landmark to tell me. By this time, the helicopter is up and is bearing down on the area. I got a quick description of the guy and told her to keep it moving. Now I can hear the helicopter over the phone. Put it on the run. It gets sent out. Helicopter is circulating the area, so we are all pretty close. Officers are driving down the side road of the railroad tracks, and she finally tells me she can see the highway. Narrowed it down even closer. Helicopter finally spots them off in the wood line, and beelines the officers to them. Guy was arrested. He had a gun too. Kids are safe, and the whole ordeal took about 6-8 minutes tops. It was scary to me because I have a daughter that age, and as hard as I try, I still get emotionally invested in these calls. I have definitely had worse calls, but that is the one that tugs on my heartstrings. Dispatcher here. Our agency has Caltech. They talk to the citizens. Fire dispatch, they handle FD radio traffic. EMS dispatch, contracted out through AMR. And police dispatch handles police traffic. This is where I am. I've had some pretty scary radio traffic, but I don't ever actually speak to the citizens myself. This is the call that's always stuck with me. It's about 4 a.m. on a Tuesday, and in my city it's pretty slow going at these times usually. We've got our fair share of MHMR citizens that call a lot. Whether it's for a minor made-up inconvenience, or to cuss us out, or scare the shit out of us saying something real bad is happening. So we were just sitting around talking when I get an auto versus pedestrian call. Call text reads something like, complainant sees body parts all over the road. Then proceeds to get real descriptive of how and what is laid out where. So I send my units, but my initial reaction is that this definitely isn't real. Then 10 more people call it in. My units run code, lights and sirens, and make the scene. Sure enough, 2 bodies absolutely splattered across the roadway, not a highway or anything, 40 miles per hour zone. I only had to read the carnage being described, but what really messed with me is the report after. According to the accident investigator, in order for that type of damage to have been done, the vehicle that hit them had to have been going at least 70 miles per hour. The worst part is that there were no skid marks before or after the bodies were struck. A fake. We never found the suspect. I've answered this question a few times. There are many calls that will stick with me, and that's a good thing. It's important to care about people when your job is to care about people. Some of my memorable calls are funny, some are sad, some are just plain weird. I'm in the mood to share a funny one. I took a medical call from a couple of guys who I'll call the Tedeschi brothers. Just imagine that this descriptor is accurate, and you'll get an idea of these guys. One was diabetic. The other was taking him to the hospital, but pulled over at a gas station after his friend started vomiting. The diabetic guy was wandering around aimlessly during the call, so his buddy told him to move the car away from the gas pump. Me, please keep your friend here. Don't let him drive. Bro, asterisk. Our car is like right in the way of this gas pump, and it's getting kinda crowded. Me, oh, that sucks. You can move the car yourself when I get off the phone with you. Bro, actually, my friend is, like, getting in right now. It's cool. Me, dude. Do not let him drive. Have him come back here. I want you to keep an eye on him in case he gets any sicker or faints. Bro, that can happen? Dude. Hey man, come back here. The 911 is saying you shouldn't drive, bro. Okay, now he's with me. Stay here, dude. You can't drive. Diabetic dude, huh? Oh, fuck. And then, the 3 doodeliest bro paramedics we had showed up on scene. Like, these guys would wear their uniforms with popped collars if they could. Anyway, bro moved his car, diabetic dude got transported, and there were fist bumps all around. Asterisk. I am not a bro. I am a middle-aged woman and sound like one on the phone. Lamau. There is never just one call. Unless you have a bad call and quit, which happens. Most of us are dealing with years of exposure to the worst day of people's lives. I've worked a lot of really horrific traffic. Homicides, suicides, children murdered or beat to death, drownings, rapes, fatal accidents. Everything. You can't really compare one to another as a worst or the one. One reason all our calls stick with us is that 911 operators are not considered first responders. We are administrative. Therefore, we do not have the same benefits/resources to deal with trauma/exposure/PTSD or mental health in general. We can take a call and listen to a baby being stabbed to death. The officers that respond to the scene are eligible for therapy/services, but we are not. Please consider writing to your elected officials to help us get recognized as first responders so we are eligible for the mental health care/benefits other first responders receive. *****. Thank you, kind strangers, for the gold and silvers. I really am floored by the response this comment is getting. I appreciate everyone's interest and willingness to write to their elected officials. 911 staff, aka PSTs. Public safety telecommunicators need to be reclassified as protective service occupation to be eligible for similar benefits to what other first responders receive. If you want to learn more about what's been happening, APCO is the main agency for PSTs that has been working hard to push for reclassification, and they have good information on their website if you search APCO SOC Revision in Google. I'm super new to Reddit, so I'm not quite sure how to share a link. Right now we are at a standstill with them because they are under the impression that PSTs do not provide life-saving care/guidance on 911 calls, which is highly inaccurate. Public pressure can and will help us get the classification we deserve. Thanks for watching and getting this far. You all are so awesome for making it this far. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed.